In a world where imitating others seems to be, the normal situation, everyone wants to imitate somebody else. I think as Christians, it's important to note that the only person we should be trying to imitate is Jesus Christ himself. I want to read a couple of verses here before I start off with today's video. I'm sorry for the bad camera work. I am using my hand because I'm outside. And so we have Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. Therefore be imitators of God, and as beloved children, and walk in love as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us, a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. That was Ephesians 5, verses 1 and 2. And I also have here 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. And that comes from Paul there. And so that just kind of led me to what I wanted to talk about today. And that being, we need to work to imitate Christ. And what does that mean for a Christian to imitate Christ? That does not mean claiming that you are the Messiah by any means, but following what Jesus taught and living the way Jesus did, or at least trying to. Obviously, Jesus was perfect and we are not. And that's why we are given grace, so that we may fall, But over the process of sanctification throughout our life, from the time you accept Jesus into your life and to the time that your time on earth is over and you go to heaven, that goal is to be more like Jesus than you were when you first came to accept him into your heart. And that could be something that it's kind of broad, like what does that mean? And really it's definitely not subjective, but to live like Jesus just means to, one way I like to think about it as one aspect is to humble yourself, and to not see yourself above anyone else, regardless of your education, regardless of your scriptural knowledge, regardless of your upbringing, what you do for work, to not see yourself as any more important than anyone else. Again, when, Christ was born and he lived his life, he says he came to serve, not to be served, and he literally was God. And we as mortals have this thought sometimes that we should be served and that we shouldn't have to serve if we achieve a certain status, CEO, boss, teacher, that we should be served. And that is just incorrect, and an improper way of thinking about things. And so we need to humble ourselves and to understand that, we should be serving others. Again, even as leaders, we should be sacrificing as Christ sacrificed for us. And, not let the status of being, on a higher scale than somebody else when it comes to a position affect how we treat others. Another way to think about it is to seek the truth. Again, we as man tend to fall for lies and deceit and deceive ourselves so often, because we listen to what others have to say. We make opinions for ourselves, but we don't look to see what scripture has to say, and to continue to study that piece. We can always interpret things might not always be correct. And so that's why it's so important to talk with others, to keep seeking to learn from other people. And that can be so important. And it's so good to know, because I know myself in personal times, I'm certainly not, perfect when it comes to living more like Christ and imitating Christ. And there's still things that I know that I need to work on. And that's why I think it's so important to stay consistently in prayer and to continually ask the Lord to help change you, to open your heart for the Lord to work within you. Invite him to help you. I can think that can be one of the hardest things, is to humble ourselves enough to accept the fact that without God, we can do nothing at all. And so we just need to kind of humble ourselves for that. And going back into that service, mentality, we need to come to serve others in a way that, you're not necessarily degrading yourself and making everyone else seem like they're better than you, but in a way that makes it clear that regardless of the situation, they are an equal to you. As someone made in the image of God, they have that inherent value and they should be treated as such. And I think that's one good way to look at it. But I think the entire purpose of this was just to kind of say, in a world where we imitate so many other, celebrities, so many athletes, so many, influencers, we forget to imitate our entire lifeblood. God, we forget to imitate God. And that's just the most important thing to know in our walk. Thank you guys for watching. A little bit of a shorter video. I'll be posting another one tonight as well. And so I greatly appreciate the support. You guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and God bless.